Reading is Va'era. Among other things, it discusses the first plagues that Hashem brought upon the Egyptians. Before the first plague, which was blood, God told Moshe that Paro's heart is heavy. Rashi explains that the Aramaic translation is heavy, which is an adjective. In other words, the word heavy is not used as a verb in the past tense, that it has become heavy, but rather it's an adjective which describes heart. Paro's heart is heavy. He has a heavy heart. Rashi obviously does not say this in order to establish the correct version of Targum. That is not his concern. Rather, he says this because we might think otherwise according to the simple meaning of the verse. Why might we think otherwise, though? The preceding verse states that Paro's heart became strengthened, similar to became hard. Without Rashi's explanation, we might think that this verse is on the same track as the previous verse. Therefore, Rashi needs to explain the correct grammar to us, otherwise we would not know exactly what the Torah is saying. However, this itself requires explanation. How does Targum know that the word heavy is an adjective and not a verb? We find examples where the word is used in both ways. One of the commentaries which explains Rashi says as follows: why would God tell Moshe to go and ask Paro to redeem the Jewish people if his heart was already hardened? What's the point? However, there are other commentaries who point out a serious difficulty with this explanation. It is known that for several plagues Paro's heart was already hardened. Nevertheless, God still told Moshe anyway to warn Paro concerning each plague in order to demonstrate that Hashem was in control. This actually strengthens the original question. Why does Rashi explain the word heavy as an adjective when we see clearly that in many instances his heart was already heavy even before Moshe approached him? Rashi must somehow understand from the verses that in this instance heavy is being used as an adjective. The explanation is that Rashi is coming to answer a general question which could be asked. This first plague was different than the following nine plagues in a certain respect. First, Hashem tells Moshe that Paro's heart is too heavy to allow the Jewish people to leave Egypt. Then Hashem told Moshe to go to Paro and tell him that he was sent by God to tell him to release the Jewish people. And if he doesn't, the plague of blood will follow. In other words, Moshe was given background information first, and he was then given his mission. This is different than the other 9 plagues. The following from this: God told Moshe that Paro's heart was heavy as an introduction to his mission. He was not meant to report this to Paro. God wanted Moshe to know that the reason Paro would say no to his request is because Paro's heart was heavy. This is something which Moshe needed to know. Why did Moshe need to know this? When God first spoke to Moshe about taking the Jews out of Egypt, he told him, "I will harden Paro's heart and he will not allow the Jewish people to leave." Moshe could have thought that this was the only reason Paro continually said no. If so, why should he be punished? What's the reason to punish Paro if it wasn't really his fault that he was saying no? The answer is that heavy is an adjective which describes Paro's heart. That is the reason that he was punished. He wasn't punished because God hardened his heart and took away his free choice to an extent. That wasn't the reason. It's because he was hard-hearted by nature. His heart was hard. It was only later that God hardened his heart to an even greater extent, so that he would say no, despite the fact that it made no sense. After seeing all of these plagues and seeing that Hashem was actually in control, to continue saying no was totally irrational. It made no sense whatsoever, and still he did, because God caused him to say no. This was actually a punishment for saying no in the first plagues. Is also teaching us a deeper concept here. The idea of a heavy heart is being stubborn. I know and understand that I should behave in a certain manner, but I don't because I'm stubborn. That's why the letters in the Hebrew word paro can be rearranged to spell oref, which means the nape of the neck. Paro was stiff-necked. For heavy is kaved, which also means liver. The sages teach us that the body has three rulers: the brain, the heart, and the liver. The brain controls intellect, the heart controls emotion, and the liver controls action. Action is where being stubborn comes to play. I may understand and feel as I should, but nonetheless, I may act as I please despite what I understand. Rashi is teaching us not to be stubborn and to follow Hashem's commandments no matter what.